Good morning. Thank you all for joining us today in our virtual platform. We're excited to have you all. For those of you that may not know me, my name is Amy Fors, and I am a Jackson Collaborative Consultant for the Jackson Collaborative Network. I have been with the network for about 5 months now. I'm excited to be a part of the network. My previous role was with the Jackson County Health Department for about 15 years, working on infant mortality reduction. That is when I became passionate about system level work. So I knew that was a complex issue. We had to do a lot to kind of tackle that problem in a complex way. So that is my background. I'm joined by Sarah Williams. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
I do. Thank you. Yes, I'm Sarah Williams, and I am also a Jackson Collaborative Network collaborative consultant. And Amy and I tackle this role together. And my previous role, I've been on every time she says how long she's been on the role, I just add like a month. So I've been on the job for 6 months. And I live in Lansing, so I continue to be excited about learning about Jackson dynamics and relationships and history and all of those things. And my previous work was at the state level at the Michigan Department of Education. So I have some experience with systems at the state and local level. And yeah, I'm excited to continue this journey today in inequitable policies and practices with you all, and hopefully some new faces from last time, some returning faces, and we will all learn together today.
Thanks. Okay, so a couple of housekeeping things that we want to just address. We encourage all folks on the line, if you would be willing to turn your cameras on. I think it's really important to make those connections and see kind of who's doing different things and who's speaking. I'll also ask to mute if you're not speaking so we can avoid some background noise. Also, I know that folks work with different virtual platforms, so there is an option to do a gallery view so that you can see more faces if you want to adjust your screen to gallery view. We welcome participation throughout this presentation or this learning convening. So please utilize the chat box if there are things that you have questions. Sherry and Sarah and I will all three of us will be monitoring the chat box for any questions that might come up. We will be forwarding the slides and some of the tools that we'll be introducing during this presentation. So we're going to ask each participant to enter their name and their email and their organization into the chat box. If everyone could take a moment to do that, that way we'll be able to make sure that we can follow up with you after the presentation. So your name, your email, and your organization, that would be really helpful. As Sherry mentioned, the slides will be posted in the chat box. So if you don't have access to them or they're not on the screen, feel free to take a look at the chat box and we'll have the slides posted there. Okay, so we'll jump right in. We're going to begin today with a quick poll. We're trying to get an idea of who all is with us today. So the poll question is going to be, how long have you been involved with the Jackson Collaborative Network? We're kind of just trying to get a temperature of the room, see if we've got some folks that are new and I'm sure we've got folks that are new and folks that have been with us for quite some time.
So Amy, this is Sherry, and I apologize. I think the testing we've done this week, see if you have the poll and can launch it. You might have signed in. Are you able
there
to
it is.
The poll? There we go.
Okay. Yeah, we've got some folks that have been with us a long time.
Ooh, Hannah brings up a good point. Less than 1 year is not an option, and therefore our data is not accurate.
I'm sorry.
So close. Round up, Hannah, round up. As will I.
The beauty of a virtual platform. Sometimes things get bumped off. Okay. We have 77% of people that have voted. We know some folks are out there. If you've been less than a year, we can bump up.
Megan said she did it wrong, so Megan contributed also to incorrect data. Just how we're starting today. We got it. We got this.
Okay, so we've got vast majority of our participants.
I love that something we're doing is considered fancy.
Fancy, I know.
In
Look at
capital
us.
letters.
Elevating the quality of our show today.
She couldn't wait until the poll came up. She was like, I have an answer.
That's because she's one of the more than 7 years.
I know.
Welcome to the more than 7 year club. Okay.
Are you able to share those results, or have you already done so? I'm sorry.
I believe I am. Okay.
Oh, look at that.
Okay. Did that share with your screens?
I can see it.
Okay, good. So we've got about half of our participants that are fairly new, 1 to 3 years, or less than 1 to 3 years. And then we've got some folks that have been in with us, about 13% that have been with us 4 to 6 years. And we have 38% of our attendees have been with the network for more than 7 years. Well, thank you. Okay, let's see. Let me close this out. All right, so I'm going to pass this over to Sarah to talk a little bit about today's objectives. I know some of you were with us with our last convening. You know what, and I'm having internet issues, so somebody wave a hand if that doesn't work. But a lot of you folks are with us with our last convening, where we did a little bit of a network update and getting to know each other and reconnecting as a network, and touched on some of the inequitable policies and procedures. So today we're hoping to get a little bit of a dive. Sarah, do you want to take over on the objective?
Yes, I'll take it. Thanks, Amy. I was going to say that your video was freezing, but I could hear your audio. So
okay.
Until that changes, I won't panic.
Okay.
Because you were coming through loud and clear audio.
Excellent.
So yeah, it is. I will start here. So these are today's objectives. And we took this, we really modeled today's learning convening, and frankly, hopefully all of our future coaching and collaborative network assistance offerings around the data that you all are providing us. So if you attended the last learning convening, a survey went out and it gathered a lot of data around what was helpful to you, what was not helpful, was this thing too long, should we have expanded more on this? And so we really value that data, and today's learning convening hopefully reflects some of that, as we really kept that data front of mind as we thought about the topic, and also how to offer a thing, and also how long to spend on things. So we will talk about it later as well, but every learning convening we have will also include a Survey Monkey at the end, because we want to keep collecting data and keep hearing from you so that we are best supporting you in the way that makes sense for you. So today's objectives, we will learn from real community examples from members who have identified and taken action on inequitable policies and services. We'll do that a little bit later, the second half of the convening. We'll gain an understanding of the action learning process to help identify inequitable policies and services within your organization. And you'll understand how to apply the available tools within your organization using the action planning worksheet and guide. So yeah, the last convening, we really started off, it was our first one with this new structure, and we wanted to connect with you all, connect each other, and remind people where we are as a network, and introduce some things. We did talk about the Able Change Cloverleaf a little bit, but based on the feedback that we got from you all, you all said it would be helpful to kind of do a deeper dive into inequitable policies. How do I identify that in my organization? Thanks for the tool, but how do we even back it up even more and start at the beginning? So hopefully we have designed a thing that applies to that. So you'll hear from me a bit in the beginning as we walk through a process, and then you'll hear Amy and our special guest, Michelle, talk a little bit about what that looks like in real life and how that was applied in a community setting. Our next slide. So this is an action learning process, and really it might be familiar to many of you. We use this in the collaborative network as kind of just a tool to move through the process of seeing a thing, understanding why it's happening, designing strategies that make sense, applying them, measuring success, right? So here's the quick overview, and we will walk through the steps a little bit today. This process is assuming that you have started with a problem statement. So if you are not aware of any problems, or you can't really jump into a thing without starting somewhere. You can't analyze data if you don't have a topic. So we are going to, this process is helpful once you have identified a problem statement. So yeah, we'll start the next slide. The first part we have is analyze data. Megan, I need to turn my chat option off. So the first bubble, and just, right, so like this is a continuous cycle. So there is really no right start and stop, but the intent with this learning is to understand a good place to start. So if you have a community problem or a problem statement, the first step is really to analyze your data and to look at your data. So we have up there, what data do we need to gather to understand the current community conditions, and what is the problem that needs to be addressed? So there could be times when you think you might have a problem statement, but in order to really confirm that it's happening, there does need to be data to confirm it, because you cannot address or implement an intervention without data to confirm it. The next step that is also data related is, it's interesting how it is all coming together. It looks great. The second one is using data to identify inequities. So this is really the piece that talks about disaggregating data. So you may have like a chunk of data that is helpful, but without breaking down the data to actually acknowledge inequities between groups, looking at data is not always helpful or the end all be all. So along with these two bullet points, we have who is currently experiencing worse outcomes than others, which is that inequities piece. What does the data tell you? And we had an example of like what inequities exist between racial groups that is very timely right now. Are people of color more affected than white people? Who specifically, like, are young men of color affected disproportionately? Like, I always think of zero tolerance policy and educators and everyone disproportionately punishing or reprimanding young men of color in schools. But there could also be a thing here that maybe the right data is not currently being collected. Maybe it actually needs to be disaggregated a little bit more. So you might not have the right systems in place to collect all of the data you need to break this down. And it's also okay if that's where this is. It is okay if the organization or if your group is at this place where you're like, actually, we think that young moms are being, disproportionately affected compared to older moms or whatever, right? But we don't have the data, so we actually need to put some pieces in place to confirm that. So this piece here is really talking about using the data to identify the inequities so that we can move forward with the progress.
Sarah, I'm just going to jump in too. So
yes,
not only,
sorry, Amy.
No, that's okay. No, I just, because I think it kind of adds to the conversation, but disaggregating it doesn't mean just by like maybe one particular piece. So you don't want to just like, African Americans versus Caucasians. So just for an example of that, we looked at like, access to prenatal care, and we looked at, okay, well, our Black and brown babies, our Black and brown moms are not receiving the care. But then we took it even like 2 more steps. So it was not just that, that the Blacks are being affected at a higher proportion, but then it was actually young Black moms, 24 and under. So we broke that down. And then we actually looked at geography. So it was young Black moms that lived in the city. And that's really where you're going to get to your target population. You really have to drill down deep with looking at the disparities to really look at what population you want to target.
Yes, thanks for jumping in. I forgot to say that we talk about this all the time, but we're like, all right, Amy, when you start, make sure to say, Sarah, jump in. And then I forgot to say that. So thanks, Amy, for jumping in.
That's okay. I'll always jump in. You don't have to invite me.
I know, but for presentation's sake, I should say, Amy, please jump in. Our next step, as we travel around this circle, is really understanding the root causes. So after there has been disaggregated data and you're looking at the data and it's telling a story, the next really big question is like, why? And so why is the data showing this piece? And I think an important piece to talk about here, and the first bullet point also, is who do we need to talk to who do we need to talk with to better understand why this is happening, and to not have the people in power or the decision makers deciding why a thing is happening. A little bit later, we'll talk about engagement a lot, an authentic engagement, but really it's a disservice and not best practice to not involve people that are affected by this problem while talking about the why. Like, why is this thing happening? So like Amy is saying, if you have Black and brown moms that are not receiving the same prenatal care, it is not appropriate or whatever for me to decide why that is happening, right? Like, we need to go engage them. Another bullet point here, who can help us get connected? Are there community leaders who can reach voices often unheard? So to that point, again, making sure that we're involving the people that are impacted by the problem with the root cause piece. And then what themes are we seeing in the community responses? And in this piece here too, kind of between this step and the next step, we'll talk about creative ways. I'll stop there and I'll mention the cloverleaf in a minute. So yeah,
I'm going to jump in.
Amy, would you like to jump in?
I would, because I want to hear from participants. So if we'll advance the slide, we know that our partners in the network have done incredible work with engagement. Some folks are looking for creative ways, some folks have done creative ways. So if you could all take a moment to type into the chat box some ways that you've engaged your community in creative ways, or some ways that you'd like to try to engage the community. So take a minute, type into the chat box ways that you could or have engaged communities, our community members, to better understand your problem. Don't all jump in at once. So we really want to hear. I think this is one of the benefits of the network, is so that we can kind of build off each other. Community events, excellent. There's always a lot of value to going to where community members are. So often we wish we could hear from folks, but we're not going to where folks are in the community. Okay, Hannah.
That's great. Hannah said, I've started asking organizations I meet with, what do you wish the library would know about you, your organization, or the population you serve?
Excellent. It's always good to keep open-ended questions too. Sometimes we jump to assumptions, and instead of doing that, we need to say, what do you need? Focus groups with targeted groups, one-on-one interviews. Excellent. That way you can really kind of get that one-on-one digging down deeper. And Spring Arbor started a virtual support group for the community. The ways we've learned to adjust.
Amy, I'm wondering if I could layer on a little thing. I'm wondering if folks have found some really creative ways right now when we're not able to be in person as much.
Right, that's what Kim had mentioned, the virtual support group. All right, yeah, visited an advisory group to ask about the problem. Advisory groups are great. They seem to have, folks know what they need. We just have to open up the questions and ask them what they need.
And Shalonda said, facilitated empathic interviews to allow community members to share their personal stories to help identify barriers. That's great.
Okay.
Well, thanks everyone for doing that. Amy, I don't know if you have any.
No, I just know. I think it's fantastic, and no, I think it's great. I think it's really important to build up what each other's done, and we're really hoping to make these connections moving forward, right? So if we know someone's utilized a way to connect with community members, we can kind of reach out to them and say, how did you do it? How'd you set it up? Where'd you go? So no, thank you all for sharing. We appreciate it.
And I think it's a good it's a good reminder too, especially for me, I'm newish to the network, to also hear about things that people have already done. And a lot of you who are in the 3 to 7 plus year network like box, this might all be common knowledge to you. You're like, oh yeah, I already know that so and so does this, but it's helpful for me to see this, to see that people have been doing really great authentic engagement work and like engaging the community in different ways. And like Amy said, like being able to learn from each other too. Like, oh, I didn't think about a virtual support group. What a great idea. Like I could use that in my organization also. So I love that. Thanks for sharing. So we will jump back in into our circle. We're about halfway through. And we are moving from understanding the root causes to the designing powerful strategies. So we put here, the strategies need to be necessary, feasible, and desirable in order to be successful. And that powerful systems change strategies shift mindsets, policies, and practices that are contributing to the problem. Strategies that focus on program design and building access awareness of existing programs and resources are the least powerful and are less likely to create lasting change. So we talked a lot about, this is a lot of words, and it is also essentially, after we've looked at the data, understanding why a thing is happening, and then what is something, an intervention or a strategy that will address that inequity. And these, I really am looking forward to hearing from Michelle a little bit later too, because sometimes a strategy is also something small, or not small, but simple, right? It doesn't have to be like a policy change at a state level, blah, blah, blah. It actually can be maybe our Black and brown moms are experiencing inequities because the bus system isn't taking them somewhere, or it's right, like there are pieces that are really, a strategy doesn't have to be huge and state level, I guess I'm trying to say it. Sometimes I feel like the words are great, but also it just has to meet the need of the problem, and also making sure that you're designing that strategy also with the constituents, is not the right word, but with your affected population at the table. So you're asking them also what sort of strategies would be helpful and create lasting change to address this problem. And then I will mention that, the last learning convening that we did talk about the Able Change Cloverleaf, and that can be a tool that can help you move from like understand root causes to design powerful strategies, like why a thing is happening. But it is a tool. And so just not to dwell on that too much, but we have for sure different, if you are stuck at any bubble, if you're stuck at any step along the way, just know that we have resources that we can connect you with. If you're like, oh, I'm kind of stuck at using data to identify inequities. Oh, I can't move past understand root causes. There are some tools, there's a lot in the Information Hub, but also things that Amy and I can pull for you. Anything else, Amy? Otherwise we'll move on. I'm cognizant of it now. So this is the identify meaningful measures. And this is really, an indicator is a name of what is being measured. It is not the impact you hope to have or the data itself. It includes things such as smoking, homelessness, poverty, unemployment. So to me, this is like making sure that the thing that you're doing is actually making a difference to the problem. So this could be, it might be more than one strategy. For example, your group may have a group of strategies that are focused on creating greater access to food in inner city neighborhoods. A meaningful indicator might be food deserts. Yeah, so this is just a piece of also like making sure that what you're doing will actually move the needle on the problem, on the root cause itself. The next step is implementing strategies. So after you've got all your pieces in place, here is where you put your plan of action into action. And in order to have a legit like plan and strategy, make sure to include tasks that are assigned to people, not just talk about like, we have this thing or we have a goal, like a goal and a strategy are not the same. The strategy really indicates like Amy will do this thing by next week, and then Sarah will do this thing, and how can we do that? And then measure those things, right? So, so they must include tasks assigned to people and also be appropriate to addressing the previously identified root cause. So talking about making sure that the thing you pick actually meets the need of the inequity that you have identified. Oh, yes. And in our notes, we also have, at this stage in the process, it would also be helpful to work directly in the action plan template. So there's another a resource that the network has. It's actually pretty helpful around implementing strategies and like kind of a blank sheet that could be helpful. So again, happy to pass along these tools if they're helpful for you after the presentation. And then the last, besides our middle area, the last step here is to track and report progress. So obviously we have all these great things in place, but we will not know if we are successful unless we measure a thing. And so when it comes to tracking and measuring progress, it is what specifically will be tracked over time to measure results. The final list of metrics needs to be clear, concise, and manageable so the group can commit to tracking and measuring over time. So similarly to when I was talking about the implement strategies, there's both, right? It's like Sarah will do this thing by Tuesday. Yes, it's done. So that is your plan, and you're measuring progress on a plan to show success, so that your whole piece, your whole effort, so you can show that it was valuable and worth it. And right, also there are pieces that might need to be adjusted, which is why there are arrows that are continuously around this thing, because as you move forward, it might not be this like lovely and perfect and circular. It might be like, oh my gosh, as we do this, we realize we've collected more data and actually we need to shift a little bit. So here we go. And so, which is why there are arrows that are continuously moving around the circle. Our last middle area, I'm trying hard not to say bubble because that's what I keep saying, but it is engagement, and we've talked about it before, but really having authentic engagement at every step, because kind of the worst practice ever is to do all of these things in a room siloed with other like white people in power who are not engaging meaningful members of the community who are impacted by these inequities. So making sure that as you are understanding root causes and designing strategies and implementing and tracking, that there is really authentic engagement at each step. So that also, right, for so many reasons for best practice, but also then you have community buy-in and they're owning the project and they're helping with part of it, because this should be a partnership process. I do have a note here too, as we talk about authentic engagement. This will be the topic of our next learning convening. We'll talk about that at the end, to save the date for October 21 also, but we will be talking more about authentic engagement and all of that. But I don't know, Amy, if you have any other things before.
No, I think you went through the cycle very well. I do think, just touching on engagement, that really helps us emerge and adjust as we go through the process. So when we're prototyping some of these strategies or throwing them out there, unless we're getting real-time feedback from users in the system, there's no way we can make adjustments. So we can't like make assumptions about, we do a lot of engagement prior to that, and then we build these strategies. But when we throw them out there, we definitely need to continue to get feedback and have conversations with folks in the community to make sure we're adjusting and emerging as appropriate. So yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. So now we get to introduce our esteemed guest, Michelle White. Michelle, if you want to unmute. So Michelle is the Director of Health Education and Health Promotion. I had the honor and privilege of working with Michelle for many years at the health department in my previous role. She has been at the health department for 25 years. I mean, it's hard to believe because she looks 15. She's so young, but no, so she's been with the health department for 25 years. She has been doing teen pregnancy prevention for 21 of those 25 years. So teen pregnancy prevention is a huge passion of Michelle's. As I said, working with her for many years doing that. So I'm going to introduce Michelle and ask Michelle if you can just give us a little bit of overview of your story in kind of addressing an inequitable practice or policy.
Oh, I have
am
a quick,
Oh,
yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware too, that the reason that we have Michelle chatting with us and as a guest is because she has gone through, right, this process, and she has gone through the wheel, but has, and I know that you will, like, we'll do an interview and chat with her too, but really tying together Michelle's experience with a problem statement and a thing and identifying and all these pieces that we'll walk through, but just having Michelle be our community example of how someone can kind of walk through this cycle and share successes and challenges. So anyway, I just wanted to say that.
yes, no, right, exactly. So as Sarah said, she has kind of gone through the cycle. She identified an inequity practice or policy, and she kind of moved through the steps. So we're going to talk a little bit about that moving forward. Michelle, do you want to give us a little bit of an overview of how this opportunity kind of came to play, or the grant that kind of came up to let you kind of identify the problem?
Yes, absolutely. So, good morning, everyone. First of all, I'm honored that I was asked to highlight um, our example here of what we did with our sexual health clinic at the health department. And thank you for all of your kind words, Amy and Sarah. And first off, so a lot of you on the call may or may not know me. We've worked a long time together, but I've been in this director role for about 4.5 years, but I've always been able to still continue to supervise this program. I did not create this project. Now, it's always been on my bucket list for honestly about 10 years, and I can explain why. But we've had some transitioning coordinators with the Teen Pregnancy Prevention Initiative. And so Kelsey Jabkowitz actually wrote this grant through the Community Foundation for the Collective Impact. It was specific to that about systems level change work. So it wasn't like we had everything that Sarah just explained and all those little boxes. We did not follow that, and we didn't even realize that in the end we did all of those things. It just naturally happened through, it was about a 14-month process. Took a little longer than what we thought, and we had many unexpected things even before COVID hit once this project was complete. But I was able to basically last October finish out the project. And so, yeah, I can talk about it. And I'm the one that's going to make sure that everything, all of the hard work that came together and what we learned and the policies, practices, that those all continue. Even when things so-called get back to normal after COVID. And what I mean by that is that the health department's front doors are unlocked because they're still locked. So, yeah.
That will always be helpful. Okay, good. So we're kind of going to go through this kind of conversation. We will be following, I think you'll probably see a lot of the conversation will follow along this cycle that we just talked about. So you began with a problem statement. Tell us a little bit about how you came to know that what the problem statement was, and then how you came to know that that was the issue.
Okay, so at the Jackson County Health Department, we have those of us in health education. We have 3 health educators that work with pregnancy prevention specifically. And, we're out there doing our thing, doing summer programs, awareness in the schools. But then we have the clinical setting, and there is this disjointedness. There's kind of the girls in prevention upstairs, and then there's the nurses downstairs doing the sexual health clinic. And we don't have a regular mechanism for communicating and sharing information. Maybe a couple times a year we'd run down there and kind of talk. But you could just tell by the population that came in our doors that we didn't have many teenagers. And you could tell from the data that even though our sexual health clinic is very busy, it's certainly not with teenagers. And then those of us in the prevention part of it, we know that teens need to do a better job of getting tested for sexually transmitted diseases and infections. They need to use condoms more often. Now, I want to say this caveat, back in about 2003, our health department stopped doing the birth control, the hormonal birth control, pap smears and things like that. So of course, we promote, Planned Parenthood, the Center for Family Health, going to, private physicians. But with teenagers, that involves a whole nother, especially the private doctors, and getting the EOB statements sent in the mail. We know that maybe these teenagers don't want their parents to know that they're going for confidential sexual health services. So even though we don't, aren't able to do the hormonal birth control, there are still many, many services. And there's a great reason why teens need to be utilizing the health department. So there's certainly enough to go around for all of, these clinics in Jackson. So we wanted to start first with our own internally. And then the plan was to expand and take what we learned from this project, and then eventually tackle Planned Parenthood and tackle the Center for Family Health. And those are things I would still like to see happen, of course. But we wanted to start with our own.
Fantastic. So you have your problem statement now, right? So you're understanding that teens are not using sexual health clinic. Kind of put that at the top of the cycle, and you start to move through it. So you looked at data, you kind of heard from the health educators, bumped down into what was going on at the clinic. And then, so you kind of moved into the why. So why is this issue happening? Like, we're moving through going, why is this group most effective? Why is the issue happening? Were there ways that you to better understand the why? Like, what did your group do to kind of drill deeper into why it's happening?
Absolutely. So of course, as adults, we're really good at thinking we know all the answers. Even when it comes to teenagers, we're all guilty of that. So we think it's, oh, they don't have transportation. Is it our hours? Is it because the health department is kind of a scary looking building? Those are all the things, and maybe all those are true. But we can't just be the only source of the solution here. So what you're seeing here on the screen is pictures. This is in the winter and the spring of 2019. This was our Teen Advisory Council, and we have monthly meetings, a lot of them on Sunday afternoons. So in every single monthly meeting, half of the meeting was dedicated to assessing our sexual health clinic. It did eventually involve, coming in and doing an assessment and walking through, but here, what you're seeing them sitting in Kelsey's living room is going through all the forms and all the paperwork. And then it was, we had probably 10 to 12 super active leaders on our Teen Advisory Council, probably from a variety of 5 different high schools in Jackson County. But how could they hear more voices? And so what we did, and it was slow, they were intimidated, even though in theory, we thought, hey, you guys should have no problem going around. And we came up with 2 lists of interview questions. We did phase 1 and then phase 2 in the summer. But it was, going through the forms, going through questions that us and the Teen Advisory Council and our staff put together. And then they interviewed their friends. And they probably, over the course of phase 1 and phase 2, talked to over 100 different high schoolers to get their thoughts as to all these questions. The other thing we realized is, how do we get the voice of the most marginalized at-risk youth in Jackson, youth of color? And, our Teen Advisory Council does a great job, but how do we capture the highest risk youth? So we have programming at the health department that works with alternative schools. So we did 2 specific focus groups with alternative school youth, and primarily youth of color, to get their feedback on these same questions. So in the end, we had, we knew our numbers were low in the clinic, but we had all this rich qualitative data and some surprising things that came out of that. But yeah, so that's how we collected the data from the target population. And then we had a lot to sort through then.
That's fantastic.
I have a quick question. Michelle, as you're talking, I know you were talking about engaging different youth and asking the questions. What questions, can you give us a brief overview of a couple of examples of the questions you asked, or how you came up with those questions to gather the data?
Mm-hmm. So our staff, and we had 2 health department staff that would lead these monthly meetings starting in the winter, early spring-ish of 2019. they would, before the Teen Advisory Council meeting, kind of have a sense of, well, these are the kinds of questions we should maybe interview their peers about. And those would be challenged by the folks you're seeing in this picture. And they would word it in a way of they think their friends would want to be asked those questions. So it might have been like, do you know what services the Jackson County Health Department Sexual Health Clinic provides? What would make you want to go there? What would you expect about the staffing? Does it matter the gender, the race? Are you afraid of anything? And so there was just, a variety, probably about 10 questions for each phase. And, a lot involved parents, and also who do you go to for your trusted information about your sexual health? And so we learned a lot by simply asking those questions as well.
That's great. Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and I love the way you needed to really challenge the assumptions you made, because I think it surprised you when you kind of drilled down deeper that it wasn't what maybe you originally assumed was the issue. So you've got this rich data, you've interviewed, you've really disaggregated the data, you've reached those high-risk populations. And then so the next step was looking at kind of what needs to happen or to address these. And again, you talked a little bit about the work that the Teen Advisory Group did. What were some of the strategies that they implemented, and a little bit about why?
Okay, so one of the things is for policies and procedures, one of the non-state mandated forms, one that we actually could have the authority to change, we made some revisions to the paperwork. We also realized that having a photo ID, like a driver's license or a state issued ID, was a barrier. So one huge win is that they were able to use a school ID. And so that is something our Teen Advisory Council made happen. And, as far as we did use the University of Michigan Adolescent Health Initiative tool. There's a toolkit for assessing clinics. So we had about 5 of our Teen Advisory Council members in the fall of 2019 actually come for a visit, use that tool, and how to make once you get someone in the building, how to make the actual clinic feel more teen friendly, LGBTQ, what do they want to see on the walls? How can we just make it, and they said it was quiet. Most people, you're not allowed to use your cell phone. There's signs all over because of privacy reasons. You can't take pictures when you're in the waiting room. You might see someone, so there's, obviously cell phone policy, and it's this awkward silence. And so they wanted background noise. Just, you're nervous when you're sitting there probably. And so whether it's a TV or a radio, they just needed some kind of background noise. So little things like that.
Yeah.
So those were all kind of things we expected them to do. But the one ultimate glaring thing that came out of our interviews was that teens in Jackson just simply didn't know that we were really an option for sexual health services. They did not know. I would say a good 90% did not know all of the services and what you can get for free regarding your sexual health at the health department. They knew of maybe some other places to go, but they didn't really think, I'm just reading Megan's thing there.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask you to feel free to address that. Yeah, we've got that.
I didn't even read it. Honestly,
no.
It's hard to talk and read that.
It's
so
okay. I'm doing the same thing.
I'm
listening and I'm reading. So Megan had a question. I think she might have had to leave the call, but and we will open this up at the end also for questions. So, but Megan was kind of asking about how these services appear for queer youth whom pregnancy isn't an issue with consensual sex acts.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, I missed some of that question.
So we can open it up. We'll continue with this and we'll open it up to Megan to be able to answer.
You want to wait? Okay.
Yep, yeah. We're going to wait on that one.
Okay, we can wait. So really it was the awareness. And then we went down this whole angle of, wow, we can do all of these things. We can make our clinic more teen friendly. We can change some of the policies and practices. But if they don't even know we exist, all of that will be for nothing. And so then we had to go in a completely different direction that we didn't even realize. And it was simply an awareness campaign that was multifaceted.
which Sarah kind of alluded to earlier, sometimes it's less than you think, right? You were looking at, addressing regulations with the ID, and there were, this is kind of, so you had your problem statement, you worked through a little bit of the cloverleaf concepts, right? Were there regulations? Were there mindsets about, was there stigma about it? Really, and those were challenged, and the issue became, it was lack of knowledge on the services. So you built some strategies to try to address the lack of awareness with the awareness campaign. Tell us a little bit about some of the things that the teens thought might be effective in moving forward. I know we've got a couple of the pictures here, and we're going to have an opportunity to see one of the strategies moving forward. But
so this really, when we synthesized all the qualitative data and, made the other changes I've already referenced, we knew around by Thanksgiving time of last year that we needed to save a significant part of this budget. Now, mind you, let me also say, getting the teens' input through this interview process, we had the benefit of having this collective impact grant. So they did get stipends for going to these meetings. Their friends that they took the time to interview, they all got paid for that work. So that was crucial. But they decided around Christmas break last year to actually make videos, 3 different ones specifically for highlighting awareness regarding our sexual health clinic. One is, where is the health department located and how do you get there? What does our building look like? The second is all about addressing the fears and the unknowns. The fear of the unknown is what's going to happen. As a teenager, they're all about, I'm not going to go somewhere if I don't know what to expect. So our longer video, that might just be a couple minutes long, is about what to expect when you come into the sexual health clinic, what's going to take place during your whole visit. And then the third thing is, how easy is it to come in really quickly, not talk to anyone, and just grab free condoms. We know condoms can be expensive, even at any store. So how can you just quickly, go in and out and no one's going to know you're grabbing condoms? So this was all before COVID, of course.
Just going to acknowledge that. So you built these strategies, and then COVID came and you had to kind of adapt and adjust.
Absolutely. So with the videos, we partnered with JTV around the holiday break, and that took place. And then we extended this project into January and February of this year. So it just ended the end of February. But we did, social media, and I'll get to the school piece as well, and COVID, Amy. But so we did a paid social media campaign, and we, every 2 weeks, we rotated the videos that we made. We had the 3 different ones. And so we had great success when those were running. We would have teens come into the clinic and say, hey, I saw your video, I'm here. So it was kind of nice that someone would actually say that. And then we just, we were tracking the data of our teen population up until, the middle of March, when COVID kind of made us shut down. But the other strategy is getting this out through, we'd have the Teen Advisory Council come and, make some fun TikTok videos, put it on Snapchat. Just the more they could have their friends see, hey, this is how you get condoms at the health department. All of those things were free and easy. The part with the schools is, 9th grade health class is a requirement. The majority of high schoolers take that in 9th grade. Usually 2 weeks of sex ed is part of that. So they realized they could get thousands of high schoolers to see these videos potentially, and relying on health teachers in our local school districts to, first of all, know about this, see these videos, and also show the videos to their health students every single semester. So that was a way of reaching thousands, and we're still in the process of doing that. So
that's amazing. That you kind of segued into our next kind of step in the process, is who else is doing this in the community, and how can you partner with them to make sure that this becomes.
Can I interject? Yeah.
Sure.
So I just want to come back and summarize just briefly too, because I know, Michelle, you were talking about some of the great things that came out of the data when you were engaging the young people,
yes,
the students, and a couple different things that came out. But it sounds like, so for this example, and you said that you guys created videos, the main data that came out of the focus groups was the reason that young people were not accessing the health department as much was because they were not aware of it. So that was the main root cause, right? That was, even though you thought adults were definitely it's because it's a scary building. definitely we have bad hours, right? I just wanted to summarize that part. So with the intervention and the strategy that you're talking about, the real main root cause was a lack of awareness and lack of education. I just want to make sure I summarize that
And
right.
going into this project, we would not have predicted that. We thought it was maybe one of 10 factors, but we didn't think, we honestly thought that it was more about our building, or honestly the hours.
Yep.
Or maybe our policies and procedures. And it was glaring in our face as the result of all of this data was awareness.
Yeah.
And we heard that over and over. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I love, I mean, truly, I feel like good, authentic work is done in humility. And it's my favorite thing ever, because I also love to be wrong by data. So, especially when young people tell you things, right? So I love that part of what data came to the top, right? So this is the reason this thing is happening. And then when you said that some videos were made, you also mentioned before that you authentically engaged youth while deciding what strategy you were going to create. So instead of just deciding as adults, right, like, oh, obviously if teens are not aware, then I'm going to put up flyers, right? Like, you guys actually engage youth when deciding which strategy to use.
Absolutely.
Right.
So all
And
these ideas, word for word, about Snapchat, TikTok, these GTV videos, what the videos would focus on, what they might look like. And of course, you make them short and sweet. No one's going to watch a long video. You put them on YouTube. They need to be on the website. But the teens started saying this back in November about, this was November of 2019, putting them on Google Classroom or whatever online platform. I have 3 teenagers. I knew a little bit about the school that they weren't doing online work at that time, but I knew that they did use Google Classroom. And the teens in the teen advisory group, they went to a different school district and their school used another platform. This is all before we knew it was going to be happening with online platforms in different schools. So they were like, every teacher uses that. They can upload this and it'll always be there for their students to see. And then they can, show the videos. It'll take 10 minutes to show these in class and the health teachers can talk about it. So we, that was all, it came directly from the teens. We did talk to the ISD back in early March about what this would look like to get this uploaded so that every school district in Jackson County at the high school level could have these uploaded. And then all of that got delayed because a week later, everything was shut down. But we're still making that happen. So we've actually been communicating the last 2 weeks about that. And it's looking a little different than our conversation. I think it would have been a little more complicated, honestly, to do it back then. But the ISD has a more streamlined process now of getting that information up there. So of course the teens are also bombarded with loads of information. So they may not be in class for their teacher to show this to them. And, COVID just threw a loop for everything because, this is a walk-in clinic. You can walk in for your sexual health services, for if you want to get checked for a sexually transmitted disease, you want to get the free condoms. And since the middle of March, none of that has been happening. The health department doors are locked. We let people in by appointment only. So this has threw everything for a curve. Yeah. So everything you'll see in this beautifully written white paper about this project and all of our plans, yes, some of those are happening, but the data we were able to collect, even doing this huge awareness campaign, I don't want to really push that right now because you can't walk in and get condoms. It's, it's going to be intimidating. So until the health department doors are unlocked and we have the nursing staff that can maintain the hours as they used to be pre-COVID, this is just going to have to be on hold a little bit of the walk-in services. We did tailor our, we do have a new teen pregnancy prevention coordinator that started in April. So I've kind of kept the consistency with this project. And I plan to do that. And One thing we did adjust is that the teens can't really come to us for condoms. So throughout the summer, we still have, free condoms to distribute in the community. So Abby Davis is our new coordinator, and her and Greg Hardrake, they went around and they have done that multiple days. They have, if you need condoms, let them know and they'll make sure the teens can come to you as an agency. But they've also just driven around and found groups of teens or promoted, hey, we're going to be here giving out free condoms. So that's been adjusted because of COVID. We can't rely on all these great things that came out of pre-COVID work that was done.
Right, which is just a great way of kind of, pointing out being emergent, and I know Greg and Abby have been kind of, dealing, condoms out of their trunk, which is fantastic.
They have, yeah.
I know, and it's been awesome, and I think they've distributed thousands to just by going to the community to where folks are, like showing up at basketball courts when you got a group of kids that are there, and just making sure that they're yeah, which is fantastic. So I think that's great. I just want to mention Michelle talked about a white paper. So Michelle did put a lot of this whole grant process in a very complicated white paper. We encourage you to reach out to Michelle if you have a lot of questions about this too, because she is willing to forward that white paper and it includes kind of the process, lessons learned, ways that they emerge, things like that. But we're encouraging you to reach directly out to Michelle for that, because oftentimes if you've got something that really strikes you, those partnerships can really be valuable. So Michelle's, her information was on the slide prior, and you'll receive these slides after. But yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge when she mentioned the white paper that she does have that available for in-depth. So we're going to, I want to step back a little bit to focus, kind of bring it back to the cycle and the process. We talked about building strategies and what worked for teens and challenging assumptions. We also just want to acknowledge that sometimes we'll look at strategies, so originally you thought maybe we'll change the hours. In building those, we're always addressing, are these unintentionally affecting someone, in a way that might not work for them and things like that. So partnerships, tell me a little bit about how you looked at who else might be involved in this, or how you could partner with folks to make those strategies. I know you touched a little bit about the ISD, but where it's just kind of making sure that you went beyond just the TPPI advisory group to implement them.
I would also say, the partnerships, being honest, is just ongoing with our staff in the sexual health clinic. I've talked about a little bit of the disconnect with the prevention folks and the clinical services. So of course, I'm kind of leaving them alone right now. So many of our nurses are pulled for contact tracing and of course all of that. But when they can devote the time and our doors are open, I want to make sure that, we did talk about this at their staff meetings. And I want to be sure when the timing is right again, that we continue this with those nurses and the clinical staff in the sexual health clinic. That's crucial. Obviously, the world has changed and the focus of their job has changed since March. But I get to be the glue that holds this together. I'm still at the health department. I can make sure these strategies aren't forgotten about. So, yeah, and we have a new crop of teen advisory council members. The folks that you see in this picture here, none of them are with us anymore. They've graduated. The group that was super involved in 2019, we lost a lot of them. And so last year was difficult finishing out this project. Now we have a whole new crop of teens. We're looking for new teen advisory council members. So they have to be re-educated on the process. They don't know about this project.
Right.
They don't know about, why would they put something on their Snapchat or make a fun TikTok video at the next meeting promoting this. They have no idea about this project. So that's what's hard about the always constant and changing teen advisory council is you have to keep educating a new group.
Yeah, and that
so
that's a barrier.
That's a lot.
There's challenges. I mean, it's a beautiful process, but there's always challenges that kind of come and go.
I really, I love, Michelle, how you said when we talk about partnerships, how like sometimes they live within our own organization or sometimes the challenges or barriers or not as strong relationships live within our own organization. And I will say from my lens, previous work at Michigan Department of Ed, like some of my biggest challenge was developing relationships or communication within, you know? So I love that you said that too, because like good work can happen. Often it's happening in silos, either intentionally or not. And I love that you specifically mentioned that, because I think that's important when you think about partnerships and like who else is doing this work. It might not be the person across town. I mean, it probably also is that, but like everywhere around you, how can we improve like the relationships or find out who else is doing things? And very likely they could be like in our own building or in our work group we're a part of, you know, whatever. So I just wanted to highlight that. I thought that was a great point.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm super excited to show one of these videos because I think they're fantastic. One of the stars and one of the beauties of the video is Michelle's beautiful daughter, Mariah. You'll see the family resemblance. So I had to point it out because I think people are like, wow. She's been such a passionate player in TPPI for so many years. So we're always grateful for her involvement in there. But we're going to show one of the quick videos. There are 3 different videos that you're able to access. And we'll, they're on the Facebook page for TPPI. We're going to show this video and then open it for questions. So be thinking about questions you might have for Michelle following the video. Fingers crossed that the audio works.
Welcome to the Jackson County Health Department.
Okay, so I love that video because having worked at the health department, I got confused as to which parking lot to go in. So I love the way they highlighted how easy it was and what to expect and how to get in and out. Because that does break down some of the stigma that the teens might be feeling as far as, I don't want to ask, you know, where's the sexual health and things like that. So like, as I mentioned, there are 2 more videos. Michelle mentioned them earlier as well. One is how to easily get condoms from the health department. And then one is really what to expect. And that's kind of nice and breaking down kind of the nervousness that teens might feel. So we're going to take,
yeah, I just wanted to mention, I really like, so as I was watching that video, I just love that it is so like you, from collecting the data from the young people, you were like, here's the problem. They have said there is a lack of awareness, there's a lack of knowledge. And like that video was like, here it is, here's where you go, here's, right? It was like, not that it wasn't fancy, I'm sure it was hard work, but it really was like basic and great. And it got to the point, here's like the black door. Like I loved that. There's an arrow, go in the black door. Like, so I just love very much that. And that's part of the cycle that we talk about is like, does your intervention match the need that people have said? And so like, as you're thinking about your interventions, they don't have to be state level policy change. Like you all developed a video with the help of young people that met the need that young people said. So I just love that. I think it's simple to the point. It's not fancied up. It's a minute. It like gets right to it. And so I love that example as an intervention that directly meets the need.
Awesome. We're going to open it up. Lori, if you would unmute and make your comment real quick, just kind of make it, I know you typed it in the chat. I'm so bad at multitasking. So
yeah, I just, in hearing about this project have been, and over the years, have been really impressed with how you didn't settle for, okay, we have this teen advisory council, we're going to check the box of engagement by talking to them about this thing. But you knew that there were teens that would not be represented, and their views and their voices would not be heard if you did it that way. And really had to persist even past your advisory group's resistance to going out into the community in ways that were not comfortable to them. So that's a real testament. And I know that Kelsey was very committed to that piece, but that's been an inspiration for me.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Lori.
Do other folks have questions for Michelle that they wanted to know, if they wanted to know more about the process, kind of the steps that she went through? I know we went through a lot of detail, but were there any other questions from folks?
I have a quick question too. And I know, Michelle, you talked a little bit about the challenges that COVID has brought to everyone, including your process. But some of the pieces of the process as we go around, we talk about this intervention and the video and all of that. And then there is a piece around measuring, and like, how would you measure that this intervention was successful? So I just want to put the asterisk of, I know that you said the project is ongoing and some things have shifted a little bit, but could you talk about maybe your intent with measuring or what you had planned?
So our intent with measuring is to truly just look at the number of the teens that utilize the sexual health clinic. We knew what the baseline was prior to this awareness and this project. But it would be, you know, is the community awareness campaign, are the videos, is the social media, the information on the website, all the things that we're doing, the peer-to-peer education, what is the numbers of our clinic showing? And that is not relevant right now because of the status of our clinic. You know, and also it's nice when they give that anecdotal information in the beginning. Hey, I saw the video, I'm here. That was just a nice bonus. So truly it would be, you know, the number of youth in the clinic. But I guess in addition to that, it's going to be just, and I don't, you know, so that truly is the data that we would measure, but it's going to be that qualitative stuff. It's going to be, you know, we're recruiting again for teen advisory council members and making sure that they are educating their peers about this. If you're going to be, you know, coming to our monthly meeting as a teen advisory council member in TPPI, how are you making referrals? How are you educating your peers? And truly, it would be then by educating your peers, you're going to get them to come to the health department. And, you know, we also want to expand this, like I said, and once we would take our lessons learned from this project, we wanted to do the same kind of assessment and take pieces of this with other clinics, like Planned Parenthood and the Center for Family Health. But that's all on hold right now. I also want to say just the authentic engagement. What we learned and put together from this project is just, we had learned 7 major tips of authentic engagement with teenagers. And I think there's some surprising factors. And we have a nice little infographic that shows the recommendations from all of the focus groups and teens that we interviewed of, hey, this is how you authentically engage teenagers.
Where are those? Are those in your white paper?
Nope, she actually forwarded those, and we can
It's a separate document.
Yep.
We'll
make sure
it's a document that looks like this, but
yes.
I can email that out if anyone wants to reach out, and I can send that, or if Amy or Sarah.
Yeah, we'll make sure that those are attached to the file so folks can do that.
That's great.
Which then actually,
but if I could just share some little tips of information, I just have to, you know, while I have a audience here, it's like the peer-to-peer education. We say that in concept, but what they're meaning by that is from their same social group. And this could be as simple from a band kid to a band kid, or a football player to a football player. It's not going, from what the teens say, it's not going to be received as well from, hey, this is a teen advisory council member, this is the social group that they're falling into, but yet I'm a completely different teenager. I'm not going to receive that in the same way as the label this teenager has. And I know that might sound harsh, but that's the truth. They receive it better from their own social group. The other thing is that they receive, outside of, you know, clinical information, where do they receive most of their sexual health information? And it's from the females in their life. They said their mothers, and the second most common answer was sisters. So I want to make a note of that when we targeted our Facebook ads last January and February, we made sure the demographics included teenagers of both genders. And we wanted to reach out to the females, the older moms, and even the grandmas. That was the glaring statistic to us, is they trust the older women in their life. So
Michelle, I love that. I just have to say again, just because I love the fact that you use data to make a decision. So you had young people say, these are the people that I receive information for. And then in one of your interventions, you targeted what the young people said. So I love that. And I just wanted to highlight that part.
thank you.
I'm
There's
monitoring
nothing I
the
could say, but we'll share those tips, and I'm just, cognizant of time. But I know there's a few other questions. I don't want to forget about Megan's question, and I honestly need it repeated, but I think there was something else in the chat.
There was
Yes,
a
there's
couple questions.
a question from Megan, and then a question from Hannah. Do you want me to read the one for Megan?
Yeah, that would be helpful for me.
Okay, so she says, is TPPI the only group in the community working on sexual health hygiene with youth? And she specifically was wondering about how those services appear for queer youth, for who pregnancy isn't an issue within consensual sex acts.
Okay, that's from Megan. So, TPPI, we have an advisory committee, and there's other groups that do education. Some might be faith-based, some is school-based, some is in a community setting. We have 2 federal and state grants that allow us to reach City of Jackson youth. We do address the LGBTQ as well. We have one that's more for 10 to 15-year-olds, Empowering Youth Today, and then another one that is on the Teen Outreach Program. And so it's a multifaceted youth development model, honestly, for both of them. One can focus on comprehensive sex ed and promoting condoms and things like that. The LGBTQ, that was a portion of this white paper. We wanted to make sure that we did assess the friendliness of that as well. And how do those populations feel? It's important that they receive sexual health services as well, just as much. They still are at risk for pregnancy, even though folks might not think that, but it's just, getting the awareness out there. I think the local school districts through the health teachers, that's also a part of the Michigan model. So that's being addressed. But, there's a whole conglomerate of agencies and faith-based community groups that are addressing this work. But as far as the clinical stuff and sexual health, actually, getting condoms, birth control, it's a smaller number of agencies.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so then Hannah also had a question about how did you initially engage the teens to create the teen advisory group? And I know you consistently do this year after year when you need to bring a new set in, but what are some tips on engaging to begin with?
Teen advisory groups are very hard. Let me say that. I have done that my entire career. We started the one with our United Way funding with TPPI in 2010. And pretty much every fall, or at least every 2 years, you have to spend a significant amount of time. It's hard to find youth that are bold enough to speak out of their opinion about this topic. They feel there's a stigma. It's hard to find males that think it's cool to talk about this. And you have to be super assertive with reminders and getting them to come to meetings, and COVID's made that so much harder. You have to reach out to your personal networks. Who do you know at the schools, who are counselors, who are teachers? It's hand-picked kids of, hey, these 2 kids in our high school seem like they'd be passionate about sexual health and not being afraid to be a leader for this. And, it's not talking about sex all the time. They don't pass out condoms. It might be talking about peer pressure. And, they don't have to be this extreme extrovert and be out there talking about this. Maybe they're quieter and they have things to say privately or in a smaller group setting, or they just want to simply network and learn more about the issue. It's hard to find teen advisory council members, and the ones that are on fire and stay engaged. And it's been a variety of methods to do that. we're struggling with that right now. The group that we had in 2019 was amazing. And since then, since last summer, this group has struggled. I think we maybe had 5 that were super involved this past school year. And so we're trying to rebuild. And it's not easy, but once we get that group together and have them, you know, go through an orientation, we like to expand using them and their voice for other agencies. Hey, do you have some questions that you want to ask this teen advisory council? And they can be broad. Can these teens that are there and ready to, they can do presentations, they can do parent stuff, they can, they're there. So,
Yeah.
but it's our job behind the scenes to recruit, train, and just have a mechanism of hearing their voice.
And Michelle, I mean, I've seen this group progress through many, many years. They're fantastic kids and they have great insight and they're not afraid to tell you what they need, which is awesome. So utilize them. We encourage everyone, if you've got teen related things, if you want to know how to reach teens, use that group, reach out to them. They'll tell you, hey, don't expect us to come to the health department. You've been great, Michelle, at empowering the group to make their own decisions and to kind of move it in the direction that they need. So, you know, what kind of food do you guys want? Where do you want to meet? What's comfortable? What's good timing? And you've given up countless weekends and things like that because it's hard. You know, they don't want to meet after school or there's, you know, athletics and things like that. So being really flexible and letting them pick the what they're eating, the where they're meeting, the when they're meeting is, I think, been super powerful with that group too. So kudos to you for making adjustments in that regard.
I know
No,
we're,
thank you for that, Amy. A plug for anyone on this call, if you know any high school teenagers and that would be interested in serving on the Teen Advisory Council. It looks great on college applications, great leadership experience. You can be quiet and shy, and this group can still be for you. So if you know of anyone, send them our way for sure.
I know that we're actually just doing right on time, which is great. I know there were a couple questions in the chat box, and I don't want to take like someone else's question if they have a question, but I was just going back to the cycle. Michelle, is there anything that you could give, maybe just a quick, I know that COVID is the biggest barrier to everyone and all of our work, but thinking about the process specifically, just you did a great job of like highlighting the process you went through. Were there any barriers or like things that you had to be creative in your thinking? I mean, besides like, right, adult assumptions, et cetera, but like, were there any barriers that you would feel comfortable sharing?
We had lots of staff turnover. We had a different clinical services manager in the sexual health clinic, so that delayed the project. We lost our TPPI coordinator, so that was a huge obstacle. Our Teen Advisory Council, they didn't apply for this grant. You know, it was those of us in these positions at the health department that wanted this, and so they were scared to do interviews with their friends and to use a form and to document answers on Google Docs. That took 4 months of fear to overcome. They didn't want to do it. That was something we wrote that we thought that they should do. And it was very slow because they were scared to do it. So
that's great. Thank you. No, I appreciate you sharing, just because, right, it's also easy when a process is done or almost done to be able to go back and like, we did this and this and this and this, but like in the middle of it, real life things come up, like staff turnover, I feel like is almost everyone can relate to that, and buy-in or a new person and a thing. But I appreciate you sharing that piece, because I feel like if you're 4 months into something, right, you can be like, oh my gosh, let's just do it and like move forward. And so, no, I appreciate you sharing that piece.
Yep.
If I can be frank, so my daughter in the video, she turns 20 today. My son is 18. And so when they were involved in this in 2019, they also got stipends for interviewing their friends, you know, and me as their mom, you know, God help them, you know, I was the nag of the earth. Like, why are you not doing this? This is easy money. I forget, they get 10 or 15 an hour. Just I'll buy the pizza, have a party in the basement. And that was not, my daughter did it. My son, no way. You know, I think he was a sophomore at the time. It's like, come on, you're my kid, do this. And, so even in theory, it's hard.
Real disclosure, did you double the amount they were going to get just to make sure?
Extra bribe.
And one last real quick question, and I know that you're kind of in process because COVID put a lot of things on hold, but do you have any ideas on sustainability moving forward? I know you talked a little bit about duplicating the process in the other clinics.
Me making sure this happens. So I am very passionate about this, and we're going to plug through these COVID times, but I'm going to make sure that the work put into the funds we got from this collective impact grant and the work that needs to be done with our sexual health clinic, the awareness need that's there, the sustainability is that our TPPI coordinator, through my support, we're going to make sure this happens. And I'm going to make sure that our Teen Advisory Council gets caught up to speed on lessons learned from this project and how to continue to keep the awareness going. So we don't need any more funding for it, but it's just going to be making this a priority, talking about it at meetings. And then if we replicate this process in the future with another sexual health clinic somewhere in Jackson.
That's huge. That's awesome. Excellent. Well, thank you, Michelle. We appreciate all of your insights. It's been fantastic. If we want to just move to the next slide. So I'm going to reveal a little secret. The interview Michelle and I kind of just talked through was actually working through the steps of the action planning worksheet. Okay, this is really small, and I apologize. This will all be coming to after the convening. But the middle and right-hand side is just a snapshot of the action planning process or the action planning worksheet. So the questions we kind of posed to Michelle worked through the process step by step. It gave you a real life example of like how that played out, kind of where there were glitches and things like that. We will forward this action planning worksheet to you that you can utilize in your organization. Simply start with your problem statement and it will compel you to kind of work through the steps. On the left-hand side is the Jackson Collaborative Network Action Planning Discussion Guide. So, and thank you, Sherry, for posting those. So the discussion guide is a really rich, in-depth tool that will help you work through these steps. So when you address step one, this will give you templates, links, ways to engage, how to engage. It is a fantastic document that the worksheet seems simple. And if you have a simple problem, you might be able to just work through it. But if you get stuck, I know we had questions about, well, how did you start into engagement? Or how did you reach these folks? The discussion guide will really kind of give you some tips and tricks. It has some of the templates of, when you get to strategy implementation and entering your tasks and who's going to do it and what they're going to do, gathering data, what data we do need. So it's really a very in-depth guide that will help you work through it. Sometimes, like I said, it's going to be an easy worksheet thing. You're going to plug in your problem statement and move through the steps. The steps provoke you to ask the questions we asked Michelle. How did you know who you were engaging? How did you design the powerful strategies, things like that. So that's just a snapshot. Sherry had entered them into the chat.
I was going to say, it is really, like Amy said, both documents, right, cover the same like root cause issue, process, etc. And the action planning guide is more in depth and, like Amy said, contains like links and maybe like drill down questions. And if you have a group that's working together and maybe you're leading that group and you're like stuck at a place, it really is meant for people that are like committed to making this change. Like I am stuck on, this step here, like it really is step-by-step examples of ways to really drill down to that issue and links and all of those things. Plus you have Amy and I that can help you like walk through steps as well if you get stuck. But just the difference, like both of these are so helpful in different ways, depending on where you are in the process and or like maybe the group you're leading. So we will send both of these things and all of the other like Michelle's tips and all of that. We'll put this in our follow-up email, and also Sherry put the link in the chat just now.
Okay. Wrap up next steps.
Ooh, this is me, so I will unmute myself. So this is our what's next. So we are gearing up to host the next learning convening, and we're going to host it around authentic engagement on October 21 from 10 to 11:30 a.m. And we feel that it fits so nicely. Like, I feel like half of what we talked about today was authentic engagement. And really, so much of what we talk about all the time is that. And so we're going to have a learning convening around that topic on October 21. So please save the date, and also we will send out information and reminders. And we just wanted to also like thank you for taking the time to be with us today and to engage and to take time out of your day to learn with us and from Michelle and engage with Michelle. Lori, on October 21, it's 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. at the same time as today. We're proposing, Amy had a good idea, like every third Wednesday, the same time. I'm just saying it, Amy. We didn't even really confirm it. We're just doing it.
The third Wednesday of the month. Yep.
Yes. So that it be kind of is like a consistent thing and you can kind of plan on it. And so yeah, more details to come on that. And then following this presentation, we really do value what you all have to say, because our role and how we support you all is dependent on what you say is beneficial to you. So you will be receiving a SurveyMonkey following this meeting that will include things about like, what did you love? What would improve your learning experience? What was a favorite thing? Like, do you want to hear more of Michelle and less of Sarah and Amy? Just kidding. But like, you know, these things are like really important to us as we think about how to like best support you all. And these learning convenings, which we'll be doing regularly. So please take the time to do the SurveyMonkey. It really means a lot. And we use that data to move forward with our planning of learning convenings. And then our last slide is just how to get a hold of us. And there are emails there for both Amy and myself. And you are welcome to email both of us or either of us with any questions. As a reminder, this is like a universal technical assistance offering that we offer to all of our members, right? But maybe throughout today, there was a time that it struck you, you're like, oh my gosh, I am in the middle of this action planning guide, and maybe I'm stuck at number 3 and you need some targeted support. And that is one of the things that Amy and I, as part of our role, is to help individuals in organizations move the needle, and using this action planning guide is a great example of like ways we can support you. So please reach out, even if you're not sure. That was one of my favorite things about our last convening, is we had a lot of people reach out and say like, I'm not sure if you can help me with this thing. And so like those conversations are some of the best things that come out of the learning convening. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Amy, did you have a thing?
No, that's it. Yeah, no, we're happy to hear from you. Also, when you receive the SurveyMonkey, as Sarah said, please take the time to fill it out. And if there are things on your radar that we're not addressing or that you'd like to hear a little bit more about, put that in. We've got a lot of open-ended questions, so let us know what you all need. We're here to make sure we're supporting you in the appropriate ways. So feel free to either even email us or ask us about things, but also to put that in the survey if you're compelled to do so. So well, thank you all. We appreciate y'all being here. We know that your time is valuable and that this is a good chunk of time. So we're hoping that we're happy to connect with you and follow through. And we will hope to see you all and many more next October 21st.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.